So now we're going to take a look at a unique molecule, which is carbon. So carbon has a lot of unique characteristics that make it excellent for forming very complex molecules. So carbon has 4 valence electrons, which means it can form 4 different bonds with either other carbon atoms or any other atom. It can form chains, branches, rings, because it basically has 4 points on it in order to for other atoms to bond to it. So it can make long chains, it can fold those chains around and double bond on the other side. So it's very versatile in that way. Unique 3D shapes, strong and stable bonds, because carbon bonds covalently, and those are the strongest. It can form single, double, or triple bonds. They do not readily break up in water. So like water can exist in the same medium as carbon compounds. There is no limit to the size of a carbon molecule. It can bond with a wide variety of other elements and functional groups. And only carbon can do all of these things. So the big thing that makes it unique is that it has 4 valence electrons and can form 4 bonds with other molecules, including itself. And that lends itself to all of these other things on the list. Now, because it can contain 4 electrons on the outer shell, it can form 4 other bonds. Now here in this picture, this is the simplest carbon compound, which is a carbon attached to 4 hydrogens called methane. So as you can see, you can take the carbon and you can turn it into a lot of different shapes. So this is CH4 which is methane, and it says tetrahedral, but it's like a triangle. And then this is 2 tetrahedrals laid on their side, which is ethane. And then this is planar. So because of the different bonds that it can form, it can create all of these different shapes. All right, functional groups give the molecule its unique shape. So each carbon compound is going to have sort of its own shape because of the functional groups that are attached. Because they behave in a certain way. Some are polar, some are non-polar. So all of that is going to make a difference as to how this carbon, how the shape of the molecule that the carbon makes. So we are going to talk about macromolecules. Macro means big, but we want to break those down. So monomers, mono means one, are small compounds that combine with other compounds to create a polymer. Poly means many. So I'm going to give you, these are the 4 macromolecules right here: proteins, nucleic acids, carbohydrates, and lipids, okay? I will give you both a monomer, so basically the most basic part of that molecule, like the smallest it can be broken down into and still have the characteristic of that molecule. And then I'm going to give you examples of what a polymer looks like. Okay, so if you look at our makeup, we're mostly water, of course, and then ions and small molecules, and everything else is a macromolecule. Then we are primarily over 0.5% protein, and then probably a quarter nucleic acid. And we don't make up, like, the parts of us are not fully lipids and carbohydrates, because these are what we sort of break down for energy, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. All right, so proteins are formed from amino acids, so the monomer of proteins is amino acid. Carbohydrates are formed from monosaccharides. Saccharide means sugar, so one sugar. That is the monomer of carbohydrate, is a monosaccharide. So that should be easy to remember, monomer, monosaccharide. And then if you put a whole bunch of monosaccharides together, you get a polysaccharide. Nucleic acids are made from nucleotides, And lipids are made from 3 fatty acids and a glycerol, which we'll talk about. All right, carbohydrates provide a useful source of energy, but this is immediate energy. So I definitely want to point that out. This isn't just any old energy. This is immediate energy. And then a lot of what gives our food its shape is a carbohydrate. And all vegetables, even if they're technically not what you would think of as a carbohydrate, because we think of like breads and pastas and treats and things like that, like carbohydrates. But there is a carbohydrate called cellulose that is in the walls of plants and fruit and provides structure. So the monomer of carbohydrates is a monosaccharide, and this is what a glucose molecule looks like. And then if you put 2 glucoses together, you get sucrose. This is considered a disaccharide because di means 2. And then a polysaccharide would be like that cellulose that I was just talking about. Lipids. Now, a monomer for a lipid is actually more than one piece, and that is a glycerol and 3 fatty acids make up a fat molecule. Okay, so you have a monomer of glycerol and fatty acids. Fatty acids on their own don't have all of the chemical components of a lipid, therefore it cannot be considered a monomer, and the same says for glycerol. A large fat molecule or any fat molecule is going to be a polymer. Lipids provide insulation. They repel water. So fats provide insulation. Waxes repel water and keep plants from drying out, make feathers waterproof. Phospholipids are where we're really going to think about it, because we're going to be talking about in a little bit about the cell membrane. And the cell membrane is made up of a phospholipid, which is a phosphate attached to a lipid. Steroids are a common polymer of lipids. These are 4 rings of carbon atoms. And we use steroids for a lot of structural and functional processes. Well, all living things do. And then the last one is nucleic acids, which carry genetic information. The monomer is a nucleotide. The nucleotide is made up of a phosphate, a sugar, and a base. And when you put all of these together, you can get DNA or RNA. Now, I didn't really spend any time on proteins because we are going to have a whole chapter on proteins. And so what you need to know for this, however, is what I set up here, which is proteins, the monomer is 20 amino acids. When you put a long chain of amino acids together, it's called a polypeptide, Polypeptide. Poly means many, and peptide is the type of bonds that hold together the amino acids.